Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to another Wombat Kitten Academy story. Today we're reading story number 8, Kitten Academy Time Travelers. "Uncle!" cried the Dalek as Winnie held its blaster in her vice-like grip. "Let me go, and I will tell you how to find the doctor." "Tell me, and I will let you go," gurgled Winnie through a mouthful of Dalek. So the Dalek started to confess. "What you doing, Winnie?" asked Gary, wandering up and almost destroying Winnie's concentration. "Interrogating an alien being," snapped Winnie, while she made mental notes of the information she had obtained from the Dalek. "It is a toy, silly," said Gary, "from the Doctor Who series Mom and Dad watch on TV. No, that show is reality TV at its best, and the Doctor disarmed and miniaturized a whole bunch of Daleks and hid them away from their commanders amongst his fans," said Winnie. "Wow, does that mean that time travel is real and that girls always fall just before they get away from aliens?" asked Gary. "Well, yes and no, Gary. Time travel is real, and no, human girls only fall over running from aliens if they are not wearing sensible shoes. And you will note, Gary, that I do not wear shoes at all." "So what are you going to do, Winnie?" "I am going to contact the Doctor and ask to borrow a TARDIS. TARDIS stands for time and relative dimension in space, but if this Dalek does not cough up the Doctor's final coordinates soon, it will stand for Tabby's antagonizing ridiculous Daleks in space." With the fine details of the Doctor's last known location in her head, Winnie contacted Kazoo. The Doctor had not been in northern Illinois for some time, and Winnie needed someone who could cast a wider net. Kazoo only knew a few cats outside of the U.S. personally, but his network was a bit like a bush telegraph. He could spread news by word of mouth and could also gather news. Luckily, he knew a cat in Australia, so he dialed up Ella in Sydney. Ella was somewhat startled to hear that the Doctor had been hunting a Zygon masquerading as a Tassie Devil in Sydney, but promised to send word to him by one of the crazy birds on her human fed. It was not long before Winnie looked down from her spot on the top of the kitchen cabinet as a gray-haired man with incredible eyebrows, who asked her in a Scottish accent, "What's up, Winnie? I see you know how to control Daleks as well as humans." Winnie bounced down to the top of the fridge to be closer to the Doctor and said, "You came." "Of course I came," said the Doctor. "It's not every day that I get an invitation from a cat, particularly a Kitten Academy cat. What can I do for you?" "Well, I am just going to be honest, Doctor. I need a TARDIS." The Doctor raised an eyebrow. "Oh, yes? Why?" "There have been a few mistakes I regret and I need to fix." "Have a few of them myself," said the Doctor, "but I'm not sure I really trust your brother Gary. He's a little too spirited to be given power over time and space, particularly over meal times and space. Perhaps if there was another responsible adult, say Kazoo, I might consider it. Where were you thinking of taking it?" "The Kitten Academy," said Winnie. "Well, that will never work," said the Doctor. "A big blue box in the middle of the kitten room? I know Mr. A and DJ can't see past the kittens, but even they would notice the TARDIS." Winnie was very deflated. She had found the Doctor and he was willing to help, but the broken chameleon circuit on the TARDIS was going to stop them. "On the other hand," said the Doctor, "Missy is not using her TARDIS at the moment, and it can still change its shape. I'll get my friend Nardal to drop it off at Kazoo's, and he can pick you up shortly, once he has worked out to disguise it in the KA environment. 2 days is your limit, though. I will need it back in 2 days." Winnie reached down to lick the Doctor's face, and he held her back and said, "Not the eyebrows, Winnie. Never mess with the eyebrows." Winnie, Kazoo, and Gary were in Missy's TARDIS, which now looked like a contemplation station at Kazoo's insistence. Winnie had wanted a cheese, but Kazoo was better at mechanical control, so Winnie gave in. Gary was there under sufferance. Winnie had tried to distract him with a raffia ball when Kazoo arrived with the TARDIS, while all their parents slept. But Gary had jumped in just as Kazoo started the TARDIS, and now they were stuck with him. "What is the first thing to fix?" asked Kazoo. "My head tilt," said Winnie. "What head tilt?" said Kazoo. "Precisely, Kazoo. No one takes any notice of my charming head tilt, so we are going to go back and make sure the Giffers capture my first head tilt, and then everybody will be besotted," said Winnie, tilting her head. "I get your point," said Kazoo, "but how do we make sure the moment is captured?" "Easy," said Winnie. "You will run through Mr. A's legs as fast as you can toward me, just as I am about to do it for the first time. Mr. A's camera will see, and I will be hacked into Dad's Discord account and send a command to the Giffers. Then it will all be done." Kazoo set the coordinates to the time Winnie told him, and wondered how anyone would fail to notice the arrival of an extremely handsome tuxedo cat in the middle of the kitten room. Kazoo stepped out of the contemplation station, feeling awed at being back in his first real home. That awe was somewhat diminished by the need to use one paw to push Gary back in and the other to close the shield on the station. They had left Winnie and Gary's at the dark of night, but now it was early evening and Mr. A was doing a close-up stream. His camera was focused on the young Garamond, who was hanging half off the cat tree and snatching at the camera. Kazoo could see the beginnings of a thought forming in the young wingding's mind. "Why are you the way that you are, Garamond?" and knew he had to act quickly. He leapt across the room, dived on the top of the cheese, bounced onto the chest, over the TV, and onto the fly screen, landing just out of sight behind Wingdings. It worked! Mr. A spun to see what that blur was, and just in time focused on Winnie as she tilted her head. History was made, and the timeline was righted, with Winnie's head tilt now famous across the world. "One down," said Kazoo as he trotted into the contemplation station TARDIS and pulled the lever to start the time engine. The next stop was a joint idea of Winnie and Kazoo. Baskerville and Zap were Winnie and Gary's brothers, but they did not know where they were, and they had left before Kazoo's network had been established. Winnie, Gary, and Kazoo knew each other because of Jimmy D's work at the academy, but that did not help Winnie with her need to know her brothers were okay. The first step involved a jump forward a few weeks so Kazoo and Gary could sneak a pair of Kazoo's communication collars, patent pending, into Baskerville and Zap's endowment bags. They were nearly caught by Logie, but he shook his head and said, "I need to lay off that lactate. I am seeing things," when he saw two large kittens stuffing things into bags in the laundry. The next step involved jumping forward in the contemplation station many months and hovering the station outside the windows of the brothers' new homes. They found Baskerville on his human's lap, making a very large batch of dough, going on his kneading efforts. They could hear his purr from outside and knew all was well. Visiting Zap was not quite as simple and required some clever flying from Kazoo. An overexcited Labrador called Rexy had mistaken the contemplation station for a frisbee and dived for it as Kazoo hovered near Zap's window. Kazoo was used to thinking on his back and quickly righted the flipped time machine, allowing Winnie and Gary to see their brother snuggled up in a pile of clean laundry on his human's bed. There was no question who was in charge of that house. Kazoo threw the lever and they were off again back to the Kitten Academy when the fonts were small. Gary wished for ages that he had given Charlie a proper hug when they parted, and here was his chance. When Kazoo settled the contemplation station in the corner of the room where Charlie was sleeping, Winnie warned Gary, "Be careful. If he knows who you are, it will mess with the space-time continuum. Also, he's going to be very confused." Gary nodded his acknowledgement and rushed to Charlie's side, grabbing him tightly to his chest and purring, "I love you, bro," over and over again. Charlie loved the cuddle but was completely bewildered, and as Gary finally let go and walked back to the station, Winnie sighed and said, "Well, that explains Charlie's permanent look of surprise, I guess." The kittens dashed from time zone to time zone, fixing problems. Kazoo fulfilled his promise to Ella and fixed a mistake in one of DJ's essays that Dr. Catherine Hamlin was a Kiwi, not an Aussie, and as a result fixing a drop in Aussie donations to her work in Africa. Winnie revisited her humans on their wedding anniversary, leaving her flat mouse on her mom's pillow and Gary's raffia ball on her dad's. Despite Winnie's protests, Gary persuaded Kazoo to let him have dinner 3 times in one night, and Kazoo had nicked a guitar pick from Eric Clapton's dressing room for his dad. As time was running out before Nardole would be waiting in Boston to take the TARDIS back, Kazoo asked his friends to nominate one more thing they needed to do. They chose the same thing as each other and as Kazoo. They all chose to snuggle more with DJ and Mr. A. They knew they would be able to cuddle with the Suburbans or the D's forever, but they would never again get to snuggle with their first family. So one by one, they chose nights that they had spent in the KA spa, and instead of going to play with the faculty in the middle of the night, as they had originally done, they snuggled closer to DJ and blew kisses at Mr. A as he snored. Their last wishes fulfilled, Kazoo dropped Winnie and Gary at home with their loving humans, and he settled the TARDIS on top of his cage where Nardole was waiting to collect it. "Have fun, Kazoo?" asked Nardole. "Heaps." "Learn anything?" "Yes, Nardole. No matter what kitten you are or how fabulous your forever humans are, and we have been very lucky, you'll never forget the humans who gave you that chance at a happy future," said Kazoo. "The doctor is right then, Kazoo. You have potential. And given what she did to that Dalek, so does Winnie." The end. Much love. Squeeze a kitten for me.